Well, we're joined now by political science professor Dr. Moller. Dr. Moller, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
And we just want to have you on to talk about some of the election stuff going on this year. There's a lot going on. Let's start off with the presidential side. It's definitely an interesting race for the White House. We have Donald Trump on the Republican side and Hillary Clinton on the Democrat side. A lot of unique things with this election, but is this election overall unique?
I think it is. I think it's important to realize, especially with students and younger people, that this is an election that, every once in a while we say it's a turning point election. And I think there's some truth to that. We have two candidates that are surprisingly full of negative numbers, and people dislike them. And it's important to realize, though, that when you vote for somebody for president, you don't just get that one person. You get a team that comes with them, representing the D or the R, depending on who you vote for. And along with that are appointments, especially Supreme Court appointments, which are really important, as we have 3 or 4 that are saying they're wanting to retire. And so it's more than just these two personalities. They're not dictators, they're not kings or queens. They're part of the system of government. So my advice to students is to, hold your nose and vote for one of them.
One thing, too, along with that is that there are third-party candidates, this year they're getting more attention than perhaps in past years. Mm-hmm. Is this the year that they do better than normal? Or?
No, not possible.
Yeah.
I know I hate to be a bearer of bad news, but I think it was 1980 when I was a young child. I remember Anderson kind of being in this third-party mix, and everybody was excited. And it didn't go anywhere, and we've had, of course, Nader, we've had Ross Perot earlier than that, and they serve as spoilers. And, of course, when you ask these candidates, especially Gary Johnson was asked, and it was on Stephen Colbert last night, I think it was, and he went off. He said, I'm not a spoiler, I'm a real candidate. The reality is you're not. You're not a real candidate, and a two-party system requires this big tent ideas that everybody can fit into one camp or the other. And that's because this is the system we have, a presidential system. I can go into it at length and tell you why that is, as opposed to a parliamentary system, which allows for multiple parties, but this is what we got at this point.
Great. And do you ever see us in the near future transitioning into a more three-party system, or do you think
No. What has happened always in our history, and it's not happened much at all, is that a party will die and another one will resurface out of that and form a new party. It doesn't work the other way around, where a third party will come in and push one of them out. Is it possible? Maybe. I doubt it very much. This is not like the European parliamentary model, where governments can be out of the governmental game, if one of the minority parties decides to leave the coalition, for example. We don't have that. We have set elections, November, every 4 years, and they have a different system over there. We just have a system that is favorable to two parties.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the polling, because this year the polls have kind of bounced around a little bit between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and they continue to do so with each one of them taking their turn for the lead. How accurate can we, rely on the polling?
It depends on a couple things. The polling institution that you're asking, and most of them are, reputable. And how many people you're asking, whether it's plus or minus 2 or 3 or 4%, just depends on how many that are asked. Usually you ask about 1,000 people, and you get about a plus or minus 3%, and that's pretty good, actually. You don't want to get, if you try to get down to a 1%, you've got to ask like 10,000 people, and that's too much work. So I think they're relatively fair. Polls tend to be skewed in favor of Democrats, especially if you ask somebody, are you going to vote for Donald Trump? They'll say no, just like the student poll here on campus showed one student saying they're voting for Donald Trump. I find that hard to believe. So it's skewed that way in favor of the Democrats, and Rasmussen, for example, that poll actually works that in and says, well, we give a little bit more favor to the Republicans than the Democrats because people are less likely to admit they're a Republican. It's just the way things are. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not here to judge. That's just the way things are. So as a matter of fact, yes, I would trust polls, but of course the ultimate poll is the one at the polls. That's why we use that term, and that's the official one in November.
Cool. Well, and we have a lot more going on this year other than the presidential elections. So let's talk about some of the statewide initiatives. We have some really interesting ones on up this year for decision. We have Amendment 69, which is the statewide health care, and that's definitely an interesting one. How does that affect students here on campus?
Well, directly, it's hard to say. You know, it depends. Laws are written and then they're implemented, and they can change. Obviously, we know this from the healthcare law that was passed that we call Obamacare, you know, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, as it's officially known. And that's changed since it was written, and in fact, we heard that we had to pass it to know what was in it and all this kind of stuff. I think there's a big worry about some kind of healthcare Coloradan thing happening. And I think it's going to fail because people are really leery of it after seeing what has happened with the Affordable Care Act. It could help students because, of course, they are, you know, poor. Students are poor at Metro, and they would like to see that. But in the long run, I think most students might look at it as, well, this might affect me when I start making money, and maybe I don't want to do it. So I think it's going to be a tough sell to the Colorado people and even students to a certain extent.
Another one that's gotten a lot of attention, and maybe it doesn't affect us here on campus as much, but it's the Amendment 72. I'm sorry, Amendment 71, and that's the one where they're going to require signatures from every Senate district in order to get something, up on the chopping block, I guess, for decision. What do you think the impact of that is going to be, and how do you think that's going to play out?
Oh, it's complicated. To start off with, this state in 1876, everybody knows this, Centennial State, we're a Lincolnian state, meaning the people that supported Lincoln's presidency supported the state of Colorado. As such, we have initiative and referenda, which is the policy that states in the East don't have, Virginia, for example, whereas we can put something to the voters that bypasses the legislature. We can also put forth ideas that could go in the Constitution. Both of those should be done sparingly, and we have not done that in this state. We have added so much crap to our Constitution that it's become unrecognizable. So students should take note. For example, when the budget of Colorado was done, 80% of it's already spoken for. We are not included in that 80% as higher ed. K through 12 is, but we're not. So that means that 20% of that budget we have to kick and scream for. And we do a pretty good job, actually. But that's all we get to kick and scream for. Whenever something's added to the Constitution, it makes it a guarantee. It's in there. Constitutions are not meant to be statutory laws. They're meant to be broad laws. So I'm in favor of anything that limits the addition to the Constitution with all this stuff that's out there that hurts higher ed, especially.
So I think that opens the door to my next question, and that's, why should students care, and why should students get out to vote this year?
It's important. I started off with kind of mentioning that this is one of those times that people say, you have to vote this year. It's the most important of these 4 years that you'll have in your lifetime. I doubt that's true, but it is significant because we have two people with such high negatives. And like I said earlier, most of my students don't want to vote for either of them. You know, there are exceptions, especially with Hillary Clinton, that people are excited about her. And Donald Trump doesn't garner the same enthusiasm, especially from people under the age of 25. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But he is, inspiring some people to vote that haven't voted before. This is a trend not just in the United States, but around the world, with parties that are emerging to the center right that are getting some attention. Germany's a good one. It's my main area and my main field. We see new voters voting for the center right ideas that didn't used to be, and I think it's fascinating. But at the same time, some people are scared of it.
Well, Dr. Moller, thank you so much for being here. I could talk,
pleasure.
All day about all this stuff. But the voice in my ear is telling me to wrap it up. So that's all the time we got. But again, thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.